In the middle of a busy street, Shu was chasing down some punk who stole her sword. The thief was totally freaked out by this chick and acted like he'd bought the weapon himself, so no way was he giving it back. But she'd ordered that sword months ago and wasn't about to lose it like this. Finally, she managed to corner him and decided to let the kid off easy if he just returned what he'd swiped. But the guy, in response, smoothly broke free of her grip and did a triple backflip, leaping to the side. He smirked and figured she should just give up and go home. No way was Shu gonna let him get away. So, she decided to use her trap ball, which was based on her favorite cartoons. She hadn't tested it out on people yet, so this was the perfect time. The kid casually dodged the thrown ball and grinned back. In a flash, he was inside the sphere, which gently landed and rolled towards Shu. The thief was totally stunned, couldn't believe he'd been caught so easily. He started making threats, but she'd only let him go if he gave back the sword. Whoever he is, he's got to get out of there before he can even think about payback. And if this dude doesn't cough up the sword, he's stuck in this trap forever with it. Finally, the dwarf sword was back in Shu's hands, and she was stoked. The young hero was free at last, and immediately stomped that weird ball flat. Shu just smiled, happy that things worked out with barely any damage. The thief told her to stay out of his way, then stormed off, looking pissed. Now everything was cool, and she could finally take off her mask. Shedding the magic cloak, she was 13-year-old Sharena again, the second kid in the West family. Well, she could definitely check acquire dwarven sword off her list of things to avoid becoming a matchmaker. Suddenly, she heard her older brother, Harun, calling out. He'd been looking all over for her. The heroine was hoping she could finally move on to the next objective now. After that, she almost missed the entrance ceremony. Her brother was freaking out about it, but Shu figured everything was cool. Hestia, the daughter of Count Flode, who was also her best friend, was entering the academy with her. Then a caretaker approached them. He was supposed to give the young ladies an orientation and tour. The guy led the freshmen into the academy and started laying out the basics of their training. Meanwhile, Hestia found out that the heroine wanted to choose the fencing faculty. She figured only little kids were into that stuff and thought Sharena was being immature. But our girl didn't give a damn what anyone else thought. She was gonna do what she wanted. Her friend just didn't get it. She wanted them to take the same classes, stick together in the same department. Just then, Shu spotted a fountain with a black dragon, the academy's symbol. That immediately screamed high class, and she was ready to drop some serious cash. Plus, the best teachers were here, which made this place perfect for her next big move. Later, she and Hestia ended up at the ceremony and grabbed seats near the back. Her friend wanted to move up front, saying those were the best seats, but Shu didn't want to stand out. She decided to catch some Z's, but then she heard that a new student representative would be giving a welcome speech. His name was Haley Ord Ians, and that name rang a bell for our girl. Remembering that's the Crown Prince's name, she was surprised and looked over at the stage. Seeing the kid who tried to swipe her sword earlier, Shu froze. After the opening speech, the new students were sent off to check out the dorms. The freshman girls were thrown for a loop that the student representative was the Crown Prince himself. The guys, on the other hand, were floored by the beauty of the pink-haired student who was always hanging around with our gloomy heroine. Hestia was surprised by all the attention and didn't get why Shu was so freaked out. The heroine was in shock that the little thief turned out to be the Crown Prince, who she'd now be running into at fencing. On top of that, she felt some kind of weird, unsettling feeling about his name. Shu remembered her room was at the end of the hall and wanted to know where her friend was headed. Hestia figured she was in a bad mood because she wouldn't get to see the prince as much now. So, she figured Shu was going to be hanging with the fencing team guys and wanted to make a bunch of friends too. The main character was all, "You're my bestie," and hoped they'd see each other all the time. Hestia was worried Shu would get all the guys' attention and forget about her, but our girl thought that was totally impossible. After that, Shu headed to her new room to unpack her stuff. Her roommate was a junior, and she was hoping she'd be cool. She opened the door and saw Hazel Minimage on the bed, the head of the makeup club. Shu gave her a friendly smile and hoped her roommate would take care of her. Hazel was quick to point out that she'd been living alone until now and was in a bit of a mood today. But hey, the main character was a cute little thing, so she decided to put in the effort to get along. Looks aside, Hazel turned out to be pretty friendly. After that, my neighbor found out I was heading to the fencing academy. Hazel was totally shocked, and I had to explain I just wanted to try it out. She figured at this rate, it'd be tough for me to find a husband. But I was chill. I just wanted to secure a good income and benefits first, so I wouldn't have to worry about getting old. My neighbor was super impressed with how independent I was. People had all kinds of reactions when they heard I wanted to become a fencer. In this world, working women were rare, and I never would have even considered it. But everything changed after that dream. In that moment, I knew right away I was dreaming about a past life. I saw my former self standing right in front of me, a woman named Han Yana. Turns out, this whole world is based on a book she used to read all the time in her past life. The big problem? The character Sharena is doomed to off herself if she sticks to the original plot. Hestia was part of the reason for her misery, but you don't just ditch your bestie, so she needed to get financially independent. Sometimes, in her dreams, Shu would read the book with her past self. Last night, she read the part where one of the main characters was making unwanted advances toward Hestia. She woke up in a cold sweat after finding out his name was Haley. Now, Shu understood why she felt so uneasy when she heard his name at the entrance ceremony. In the morning, she headed to history class with the group. The main character was totally spaced out, replaying that awful dream in her head. She couldn't even imagine that the crown prince could be such a creep. Hestia noticed her friend's state and decided to ask what was bothering her so much. Shu pretended like she was just super sleepy. After that, she started hiding behind her friend a lot and nervously looking around. In the cafeteria, Hestia decided to ask again if the girl was avoiding someone. Shu laughed and said she was just hiding from the scary school building. Her friend hoped that if she had any problems, she'd share them right away. Shu would have loved to, but Hestia was one of those problems. In this story, her friend was the main character. Shireen was assigned the role of her best friend. Even though she was a side character, Shu attracted the attention of a lot of guys. But it wasn't even close to being romantic. She was a matchmaker, and everyone who approached her wanted to meet Hestia through her. If she hadn't been the popular girl's best friend, none of this would have happened. After lunch, the heroine decided to leave first, since she needed to prepare for her fencing lesson. Hestia hoped that even if the fencing club guys hit on Shu, she wouldn't forget about her. But the heroine was more worried about having to see Haley in class every day. She changed her appearance when they first met. But if the crown prince isn't a complete idiot, he'll notice right away. So Shu took a desperate step and wrapped a towel around her head so she wouldn't be recognized. Luckily, Haley preferred to be alone, ignoring everyone around him. So the heroine had every chance of going unnoticed, if they happened to cross paths. Suddenly, the teacher decided to line the students up in 2 rows and hold a one-on-one tournament. This first class was designed to figure out everyone's strengths. Shu looked at Haley with dread, realizing they might end up as partners. She hated him more than anyone. There were hardly any male characters in the original story, and the first one the heroine wanted to avoid was the insanely obsessed crown prince. To seduce Hestia, he wormed his way into Shu's trust and seduced her. When his plan went sideways, this psycho showed his true colors and made life difficult for the heroine. So, for the sake of a peaceful life, she decisively approached the master. The master was pleased to meet the only girl in his department. Shu decided it was too early for her to spar and wanted to train alone for a while. The master grabbed her shoulders, deciding you can't run from every fight just because you're scared. She was totally thrown and knew that wasn't the real issue at all. The master respected her choice to become a swordswoman and was always there to back her up. That's why he waved the crown prince over to them. Shu was freaking out, and Haley was like, "What kind of mess is the master trying to dump on me this time?" The master was willing to look the other way on His Highness's slacking, in exchange for a single favor. Since she was a kid, she knew what she wanted out of life. She decided to become an imperial knight and retire comfortably. Shu studied hard and spent every night psyching herself up in front of the mirror. She busted her butt every day to build up her stamina and practice her swordsmanship. And now all those years of back-breaking work could be for nothing, 'cause she's looking at serious time for disrespecting a member of the royal family. Haley got the assignment to whip her into shape until she can spar with the others. The matches started, and the crown prince led Shu away, off to the side. Once they were somewhere quiet, he wanted to know why she was wearing a towel on her head. When he didn't get an answer, he got pissed and ordered her to take it off right now. She was stoked he was so mad and hoped he'd just give up on training her himself. The crown prince didn't get why she even bothered with fencing if she wasn't going to take it seriously. But then he suddenly clammed up and gave Shu a suspicious look. She thought she was busted. But suddenly Haley was wondering, could it be he's got a thing for her too? She was floored by how ridiculous that was, while the crown prince was just thinking, seriously, why is he so damn irresistible? When he heard that wasn't the case, Haley wanted to know why she kept staring at him. He decided she shouldn't pick up a sword for such a ridiculous reason. It was only the first day. Switching to another department shouldn't be a problem. The heir was ticked off that he'd wasted his precious time on her and stormed off with a haughty look. The heroine was furious and couldn't understand. Who did this crown prince think he was to jump to conclusions like that? She decided to clarify that she came here for the money. Her real goal was wealth and fame. That's why she wanted to become a knight. Because then they'd give her a mansion and a fat pension. And Haley needed to dial it back a notch, because her reasons had nothing to do with him. The crown prince wanted to know, was her reason legit? The heroine smirked back, deciding this was what she was born to do. Suddenly, Haley remembered hearing that cocky little laugh somewhere before. Plus, her voice sounded familiar, and he had to know if they'd met. Shu turned pale with fear, and with a nervous giggle, hid her face with a towel. Right then, the crown prince had a crystal-clear flashback to that girl in the alley and ordered Shu to take off the towel. He snatched it off her head in one move, stunned that she could be that lady. He figured she'd lifted his sword, but she played dumb, like she had no clue what he was talking about. Still, Haley couldn't wrap his head around how he could forget her crimson eyes and that grating voice. Out of the blue, Shu remembered there was lunch after the lesson. She pretended she urgently needed to help the servers set the table. The crown prince was absolutely livid that she ignored his order to stay put. But our girl activated her speed magic and vanished in the blink of an eye. The teacher was totally confused, and Shu just pretended she needed to hit the restroom. The other students figured she was just freaking out because she got paired with the crown prince himself. Haley, on the other hand, was pissed and decided they weren't done yet. Later, Hestia wanted to hang out with her, but Shu was completely wiped after fencing class. Wishing her a good rest, her friend hoped to catch up tomorrow. Our heroine couldn't just chill outside, not with His Highness around. But no matter what, she couldn't keep dodging Hestia for the rest of the semester. Back in her room, Shu collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. Suddenly, she got a voice message from home, but it was Cal, cheerfully greeting Miss Shunabarin. Turns out, the client wanted to know if the video restoration magic tool would be ready by tomorrow. She sighed heavily, figuring she actually had a schedule too, you know? Hearing that the client was ready to pay a hefty bonus for speed, she had a sudden change of heart. Shu was genuinely happy to have this side hustle. She always knew that a high-ranking position and a pension wouldn't be enough for the good life. So, she created an alter ego and became an underground fixer, repairing magic tools for the criminal underworld. To hide her identity, she took the pseudonym Shunibarin, which used to be the name of a cookie. The magic system in this world is like programming, which she studied in her past life. That really helped, and Shunibarin became famous for her skills. Right now, she needs to work on how she projects her voice. Suddenly, Hazel burst into the room, and our girl had to quickly hide everything. The neighbor was dying to know how her first day at the academy went. She knew the crown prince also studied fencing and figured Shu must have seen him. Hazel started firing a ton of questions about His Highness, and Shu just silently nodded. But suddenly, the neighbor got curious if she'd heard the latest gossip. There's a real problem student among the fencing freshmen. She went to the bathroom during class and didn't come back, so she's clearly having some issues. Hazel really hoped our girl didn't have anything to do with it. Meanwhile, Haley was tearing up his room, which totally freaked out his roommate. Cory couldn't figure out what girl could mess with the crown prince so bad he couldn't even sleep. The next day was super sunny, and the students were way too lazy to go to class after lunch. Hestia's classmates were chatting with her when, all of a sudden, she vanished. One of the girls remembered Shu saying she was going somewhere, so she figured her friend probably went after her. They thought it was weird that some lady decided to take up fencing. Not long ago, though, the guys were all trying to figure out what kind of guy Hestia was into. They heard she liked guys like Shu. Meanwhile, her friend was crawling through the bushes after the main character, trying to keep up. Her leg was killing her, and Shu figured she didn't have to come along if she was hurting that bad. Suddenly, they spotted Haley on the trail. searching high and low for the heroine. The crown prince was seriously ticked off, thinking she better quit hiding. Hestia was in shock, not understanding why the heir was chasing after Shu. The heroine didn't even know where to begin. There were just too many reasons. Suddenly, a rock whizzed past Shu's head by inches. The crown prince decided if she didn't come out on her own, he'd make her regret it. After that, he started chucking rocks like crazy in every direction, ordering the heroine to show herself. Suddenly, one of the rocks smacked into a tree and fell right on Hestia's head, making her yelp. Haley figured his search had finally paid off. Shu decided she was totally done for now. But suddenly, her friend stood up and demanded an explanation from the crown prince. Haley was completely thrown off, seeing someone other than who he was looking for. Just then, his pupils dilated, and his face froze in total bewilderment. Hestia was in tears and couldn't understand why he was throwing rocks at people. The crown prince's face turned crimson, and his heart pounded so hard he almost lost his balance. He immediately apologized and politely asked if she was all right. The girl decided she was fine. Haley wanted to know why she was sitting in the bushes, but Hestia started to walk away. Shu had never seen him so lost and couldn't figure out what was even going on. Besides, wasn't the first meeting of the main characters supposed to go down differently in the original story? Was the crown prince really that moved by her innocent tears? He couldn't get over the gorgeous shimmer of her pink hair, and the girl's tears melted his stone-cold heart. He was feeling something like this for the first time, and his heart was about to burst with all these crazy emotions. While he was sighing dramatically and singing her praises, Shu just wanted the ground to swallow her up whole. Just then, the device in her pocket recorded a voice message and gave a little ding. She remembered she'd been meaning to fix that thing. The crown prince suddenly went silent, and she had no idea when the recording had started. Pushing the bushes aside, Haley was wondering what exactly she'd just recorded. Shu used her speed magic and bolted, ending up back in her room. This all happened at the worst possible time, and now she might even get kicked out of school. It suddenly dawned on the heroine that she now had some serious leverage on His Highness. Later, Hazel got out of the shower while Shu was listening back to the recording she'd made. The neighbor cracked up, totally baffled, asking who it was. Shu smirked and played it cool, saying it was just someone she knew. Hazel figured they should probably kill the recording before any rumors started flying. The heroine totally agreed and was stoked for her next fencing lesson. The next day, she said her usual goodbye to Hestia and headed to class. Her girlfriends were scratching their heads, wondering why gloomy Shu was suddenly so fired up. Hestia decided this was the real her, and she was loving it. Later, Shu wished the crown prince good luck in his one-on-one sparring match. Haley looked super pissed, but he was trying to play it cool. The heroine decided to ask if something was bugging him. She smirked, remembering how wild his emotions had been. The crown prince immediately turned red and demanded to know what she wanted. First, Shu decided to pay him back for messing with her and played a recording of him saying she only came to the fencing match because of him. Haley was stunned by this twist and snatched the magical device from her hands faster than lightning. He slammed it on the ground and furiously smashed it to bits with his sword. Then the heroine pulled out another device with the same recording and flashed it at the crown prince with a smile. Turns out, she'd made a bunch of copies just in case. Haley thought that was a real low blow and wanted to know what she was planning to do with it. Shu sighed, deciding that when she became a knight, she'd serve His Highness with unwavering loyalty. Before voicing her ambition, she figured she'd better find out what the crown prince thought it took to succeed. Haley thought the question was dumb and figured all it took was hard work. That answer was totally predictable, but completely wrong, and she decided he was clueless. She, on the other hand, was sure that success required a little talent and a whole lot of pull. The crown prince was thrown for a loop and didn't get what she was talking about. The First Imperial Order of Knights hadn't seen any fresh blood in ages, meaning it's full of old-timers who hate change. They boot out anyone they don't like, with no chance of appealing the exam process. That's why she wanted Haley to be her insurance policy. In other words, he needed to do everything he could to make sure the exam was on the level. The crown prince figured if she was throwing around words like that, she must be pretty damn confident in her skills. Shu knew she was weak right now, but she was planning to change that by the time her training was done. He thought she was cocky as hell, but he was down with those terms. In return, He expected her to make sure that recording just disappeared permanently. Also, Haley was hoping she'd help him get closer to that girl, but she shut that down immediately. Meanwhile, Cory was digging through magic books, trying to find some info on Shunibaran. Too bad nobody ever got a straight interview with her, so there weren't any pictures. And since she's working underground, it's gonna be a real pain to figure out who this master really is. Rounding the corner, he suddenly spotted Hestia walking with her crew. All of a sudden, the mage realized he just couldn't take his eyes off her. Just then, some dude from class walked up to her, hoping she'd read his letter already. Hestia apologized, and the guy was like, "No biggie, you probably just got busy and forgot." She straight up told him she just didn't know how to turn him down. Cory was surprised how blunt she was being. Hestia then went on to say her ideal guy was someone like Sho. The next morning, the main girl and her friend headed to Empire History class. The lecture was a total snooze fest, and Hestia was out like a light in no time. But for Sho, even that class was pretty chill after she dealt with His Highness's little issue. Still, she was a little worried that Haley was way different from how he was in the book. Just like the original story, he fell head over heels for Hestia the second he saw her, but they weren't supposed to meet again until after sophomore year. And this was way too soon. Guess the Crown Prince was actually somewhat normal when he was a kid. Just then, the teacher flicked her forehead for spacing out and not taking notes. Even though half the class was asleep, he had to pick on her. It was his whole complex about dealing with smart kids, since he graduated late because he sucked at school. Suddenly, the bell rang and everyone bolted for the cafeteria. In the hallway, the Crown Prince unexpectedly called out to Shu. He wanted to borrow her for a sec and hoped Hestia wouldn't mind. She got bummed out because he only wanted to talk to Shu and not her. Haley panicked, hiccuped loudly, and flat out refused. Once they were alone, he bitterly recalled how the heroine used magic and unfairly won their sword fight. Shu quickly clarified that she took the fight seriously and did everything she could to win. The Crown Prince immediately pretended that he'd suspected something like that. He'd prepared for that fight, knowing she was sneaky and ruthless, so she'd definitely use magic. Nevertheless, he admitted his arrogance. Haley had encountered magic in battle before, but never seen anything like that. Shu was too unpredictable, and he was finding it hard to deal with. The heroine could clearly see how hard it was for him to admit defeat, for the first time ever. It reminded her of her past life, when she comforted her little brother after he failed a test. She even felt like cheering up the Crown Prince, and decided that his skills weren't actually that bad. There are many talented people in the world, but few can admit an opponent's sneakiness and their own defeat. Shu knew she was behind the other fencers in strength and stamina, so she was counting on his help. In return, she was ready to help him get through this. After that, she was about to go get lunch, but Haley suddenly stopped her. He figured it had been so long, all the food was probably gone, so she could eat with him. She realized he was talking about the Imperial Chef's culinary masterpieces and almost choked on her spit. The next day, they headed to fencing class. Haley had prepared a muscle-building program on paper, specifically for her. She read with dread about thousands of reps of strength exercises every single day. She didn't believe anyone could even do that, but apparently, the Crown Prince had been training with this list since he was 9. The girl decided it was all BS, and he just plain hated her. Couldn't Haley grasp that such a simple program was too much for her? Shu figured it'd be way easier to tap into her instincts and dodge the sneak attack. The Crown Prince thought she was too lazy and wanted to test her sincerity during sparring. Later on, Hazel slapped on a face mask and started doing some exercises. Exhausted and starving, she decided to ask Shu for some easier workouts. Plus, she had no idea when Shu would be back. It was super late. Just then, the door burst open and a sweaty beat-up zombie stumbled in. In a raspy voice, Shu was genuinely relieved to have made it back to the dorm. She totally collapsed in the doorway, and her roommate had to help her shower and change. Again, looking at her calloused hands, Hazel decided this couldn't go on anymore. The heroine was grateful that she'd been taking care of her for days, like a sister. Day after day, Haley kept pushing her training harder and harder. It was so brutal that her roommate had to carry her to the shower. Hazel thought the Crown Prince was way out of line, but Shu was just amazed by her kindness. After the shower and meds, she decided to give the heroine a few face masks. That's when Shu crashed and woke up super early, when it was still dark outside. After her roommate's care, she felt way better and her skin was glowing. The heroine decided that her biggest win, after getting into the academy, was meeting Hazel. She lay back down and heard someone come into the room, but she was too wiped to even look. Suddenly, she heard a soft whisper right above her, calling her name. Turns out it was Hestia. What the heck was she doing here this early? My friend just silently crawled under the covers with me, which kinda set off my alarms. Hestia had a nightmare and wanted to finish the night with me because she was freaked out. Apparently, she dreamed about me laughing and hanging out with a bunch of other people. She was calling my name, but I wouldn't even look at her. Without me, Hestia felt super lonely. It hit me then that I'd been so wrapped up in training, I totally ignored her. Hestia snuggled up to me and confessed she was scared of growing up, 'cause then we wouldn't be able to goof off together forever. She knew she seemed immature and wanted to be a better person. I just told her everything was cool and she was worrying way too much. The next day, Shu was outside flexing her muscles for her friend. Everyone around was cracking up, and Hestia was totally lost, like, what's going on? Turns out, our girl was showing off the results of her hardcore workout routine. Her friend wanted to know how long she was sticking around, since Shu had training coming up. But our girl was happy to chill for a bit. Plus, she'd cooked up a new way to get back at the Crown Prince. He's gonna have to block 100 attacks with a gravity-weighted wooden sword. Hestia was about to bounce, but our girl stopped her and started digging around in her bag. Seeing she pulled out grape-flavored ice cream, her friend got super hyped, 'cause that stuff's expensive. Shu knew that, which is why she made the ice cream herself. Wishing her a good time enjoying it, our girl hoped to catch her at dinner. Hestia noticed that Shu only ever looked forward, always pushing toward his goals, and it scared her that she'd get left behind. Later, our girl changed for her fencing lesson. She smiled, realizing her physical shape had actually improved. Sure, Haley's methods were annoying, but they were way more effective than just standard training. After that, she headed to the training grounds and surprisingly found it empty. Sitting on a bench, she suddenly saw 3 students walk onto the field. They didn't spot Shu and figured they were totally alone. One of them learned yesterday that air amplifies fire magic, and, get this, it's inside people. Hearing them talk about, internal combustion, she stared at them, totally confused. Suddenly, they decided to test this theory out right then and there. A few seconds later, an explosion rocked the area just yards from Shu, filling the air with a nasty stench. Suddenly, the Crown Prince plopped down next to her, holding a video recording device. Now he understood the look Shu had given him that time. Still, he was glad she deleted that recording, just like she promised. After training, a beat-up Haley went to wash up and take a shower. Despite everything he tried, the heroine still managed to really mess him up. He was struggling to contain Shu's gravity magic, but he just couldn't do it. Plus, he couldn't keep up with her magic speed and was taking a ton of hits. The Crown Prince hadn't been pummeled like that in ages, and he had to admit, Shu's magical abilities were top-notch. He couldn't figure out why she even went to the fencing faculty and was now giving him such a hard time. Remembering her talk about chivalry and a cushy retirement, Haley figured this girl was seriously weird. At the same time, he knew he was the one who screwed up when he tried to snatch her sword. But whatever, can't change what happened, gotta keep grinding with the training. The Crown Prince remembered Shu saying he was leveling up fast, like he spent every day figuring out how to counter her moves. She praises him like she's messing with him, but either way, his actual dueling is solid. Still, sometimes it felt like she treated him like a little bro. But against all odds, Haley wasn't even mad about it. Suddenly, he saw his buddy Cory, who was wondering why His Highness was grinning like that. The Crown Prince decided it wasn't important, so the mage just shrugged and tossed a bunch of chips from the bag into his mouth. A few crumbs fell on the floor, and Cory's desk was littered with candy wrappers and leftover grub. Even though he was the eldest son of the writer de Boas, he was a total scumbag. Suddenly, the mage wondered if Haley knew a girl named Shu. The Crown Prince acted like he didn't know, and then Cory flopped onto the bed, exhausted. Before he passed out, Haley wanted the mage to clean up his darn candy wrappers like, now! The next day, the heroine handed her friend an application to join her magic management club. Hestia apologized and had to refuse, since she didn't know squat about magic. You can start a club with just 2 members, and as long as you have a track record, you can keep it going after you open. If they perform well, They'll even rake in a ton of cash. Too bad her friend couldn't help at all, since she was already in the gardening club. They needed to find another club member, ASAP, but the classroom was already empty. Suddenly, Cory barged into the office, wanting to know where a girl named Shu was. The heroine froze, staring at him in surprise. When he didn't get an answer, he decided to look for Shu at the fencing arena. This guy had a pretty intense look about him, which kind of freaked the heroine out. At the same time, he was seriously handsome, and if they'd met before, she definitely would have remembered him. First off, she decided to tell him that Shu wasn't at the fencing faculty right now. Besides, she wanted to know why he was even looking for this girl in the first place. Turns out, he was just curious about what she looked like. Since they'd met, the mage wanted her to tell Shu that Cory de Boas was looking for her. The heroine instantly remembered that he was one of the main characters in the novel, and the son of de Boas, the Empire's rising star writer. He was also crushing on Hestia, but his passion for magic was way stronger. But the truth is, he cared about that girl more than anyone else. Shu decided to confess that she was the one he'd been looking for. Cory was surprised she was a girl, 'cause he thought it was some dude's name. He rushed to explain that Hestia thought she was his type, and he was just curious to see. The heroine was in shock, couldn't believe her friend would say something like that. She remembered that ever since they were kids, Hestia had always looked up to her. Up until now, Shu thought she had everything under control, so why was everything going sideways now? Suddenly, it hit her. Looks like he already met her friend. Did it happen in the library, just like in the original story? Whatever, just like with the prince, this is happening way too soon. Does this mean things are gonna blow up before graduation? Anyway, the main thing we gotta figure out is still finding someone to start the club. Haley's already in the fencing club. Hazel runs the makeup club, so she's out too. Everyone Shu knows is already in a club, leaving only those three problematic guys. Suddenly, a brilliant idea popped into her head. In the original story, Cory was a magic whiz, so he'll definitely join the magic club. She ran into the hallway and saw the mage accidentally bumping into other students. The students were ticked off at his clumsiness and told him to watch it. Right then, Cory sadly eyed the dropped candy, knowing he couldn't eat it anymore. Recognizing him and seeing the mage's terrifying expression, they immediately apologized and bolted. The heroine knew from the novel that Cory wasn't really scary, but his face was pretty intimidating. She approached him with a professional smile, deciding to ask if he was interested in magic. The mage responded by clarifying that it was his specialty. Shu wanted him to dive into a whole new world of magic with her in the magic club. They'd be studying the drawing of magic circles, application theories, and formulas. Cory thought about it and decided it sounded pretty interesting, but he wanted to join a club with a lot more people. He just needed a place to kill time, and if there were too few people, he'd have to work harder. The heroine decided he could do whatever he wanted, since the support fund's goal was just to get the club started. The mage still didn't see the point of any of this. Just then, the teacher spotted them and told Cory to stop bullying Sharena. Because he looked so intimidating, the mage was just misunderstood. Shu decided to see if he could even smile. 2 seconds later, she regretted asking when she almost died of fright. Now she was pretty sure Cory didn't have any friends at all. Sometime later, the club room was finally ready. Even though there were only 2 people in the club, they got a pretty spacious lab. Soon, Cory showed up carrying a box of his stuff. To her surprise, it was just candy and a strawberry-patterned blanket. The mage figured that was plenty and offered Shu a few candies. He dumped the sweets into a vase, grabbed a blanket, and decided to crash for a bit. Right in front of her, he just calmly passed out on the couch. She'd already figured out he didn't have any friends, and that he had a hard time connecting with people. So, his wanting to join a group with a ton of people seemed kinda weird. But it worked, and Cory agreed to join her club. So, mission accomplished, and she wasn't about to wake him up. But suddenly, the mage realized just how good he felt right now. Club events would be every other day, and they could ditch class early, which meant more free time. Being able to chill in such comfort made his heart flutter. Shu was genuinely happy that he liked it. Suddenly, Cory decided she shouldn't be so formal with him. They were like friends now, so she could chill out with the formalities. The heroine knew the difference in their social standing was huge, and she could get burned for even a tiny slip-up. She hesitantly agreed, then went right back to being formal. which earned her a cookie to the lips. Shu wanted to argue, but then a bunch of sweets started flying her way. The heroine realized the mage was going to keep stuffing her face with treats until she just used his name. A few days later, she headed to music class, which was super boring. Shu would rather be doing club stuff all the time, especially since she and Cory got along so well. She also had to admit that Hestia had an absolutely killer voice. Suddenly, she saw Haley and the mage waiting for her in the doorway of the study. The main character was hoping the teacher would take pity on them and end the lesson quickly. Instead, the teacher noticed that Sharena was just moving her mouth, not actually singing. The main character figured she was just being misunderstood. Then, the madam ordered her to sing one of the songs solo, and only then would the lesson be over. Everyone immediately stared intently at Shu, hoping she'd hurry up. Realizing there was no other way out, the main character howled like a... Well, it wasn't pretty. Her voice was the main reason why she hated music class, but there was nothing she could do, and she could only watch as everyone cracked up laughing. After that lesson, absolutely everyone around started laughing as soon as Shu came into view. She couldn't figure out why the teacher did her like that. She just wanted to disappear. At least she could take her mind off things during club activities. That was a plus. When she walked into the lab, she was surprised to see Cory all wrapped up in a blanket. He wasn't moving, like he was asleep, and there was a note on the desk. Turns out, he'd made her some snacks to munch on before he crashed. She looked at the tray and suddenly noticed all the snacks were good for her throat. Realizing he wasn't asleep, Shu yanked the blanket off him and demanded an explanation. The mage waved hello with a smile and tried to say something in a shaky voice. But as soon as he saw Shu, he remembered her voice and couldn't stop laughing. After that, Cory started regularly feeding the main character sweets. Even when it was just him and Hestia, he'd give her treats and make sure she ate everything. Her friend couldn't figure out why the mage was always stuffing Shu with sweets. She remembered him laughing his ass off at her singing and figured Cory was just trying to apologize. Hestia used to think he was creepy, but seeing how much he cared, she totally changed her mind. Just then, the mage came over again, and Shu hoped that she and her friend would become close. But suddenly, she noticed something weird and gave the mage a suspicious look. Later, Cory noticed that a lot of her stuff looked more like mechanical gadgets than magical devices. Shu decided to show how effective the club was at protecting against, well, difficulties, and new magic alone wouldn't cut it. So the mage decided to help out any way he could. He also wanted to figure out the formula for her magic circle and how she rearranged it. Cory was blown away. She designed it herself. Like, how did she even think of that? Magic circles are heavily tied to math, and her knowledge from her past life really came in clutch. After all that time they spent together, the mage turned out to be a pretty decent guy. He's a gifted mage and a humble student, always listening and looking out for others. Shu came to the conclusion that Cory was a way better fit for Hestia than Haley ever could be. So, she decided to just come out and ask him straight up if he liked her. The mage was caught off guard, wondering where the heck that question came from. But she was convinced he was always bringing her sweets just to have an excuse to see Hestia. Plus, the day they first met, he came up to Shu to ask her what his ideal type of girl looked like. Cory admitted he noticed her at first, but they never really talked, so it wasn't enough to spark anything real. Hestia was totally his type, with that candy-colored hair and her sweet personality. The mage also noticed she wasn't as scared of him lately, which was kinda throwing him off. She completely missed his vibe and just figured he was dodging a new topic. Cory took a good look at Shu and realized he hadn't come to see her just to run into Hestia. She almost jumped out of her skin, telling herself she was just curious, nothing more. Besides, she knew the mage came to see her because he didn't exactly have a packed social calendar. Cory was ticked off and pointed out he also hung out with the crown prince, but Shu figured Hestia was in the mix too. The mage gave her a puzzled look, thinking she was twisting the knife a little too much. She, on the other hand, was stoked to finally see a reaction from him that she actually liked. Back in her past life, she came home one day and waited with her siblings for their parents to come home. But then her phone rang, and she heard they'd been in a car wreck. Right then, Shu woke up, totally soaked in tears. She looked like death warmed over the next day, and Hestia figured she'd skipped lunch. But Shu blamed her mood on just not being able to sleep. Lately, her dreams about her past life were getting more and more vivid. It's also gotten easier to pull info from the novel, since she can clearly see the text and read it in her dreams. The problem was the nightmares, which were getting way too real and hurt like hell. Shu couldn't shake the bad vibes and had no clue how to get rid of them. Just then, Haley walked up with this fake friendly look on his face, and Hestia immediately bowed to him. He figured, since they're classmates, they could ditch all the unnecessary formalities. Then he turned to the heroine and greeted her calmly. The second he did, that music lesson popped into his head, and he just burst out laughing, couldn't help himself. After getting her revenge on him in fencing, Shu went to practice magic with Cory. Under her guidance, the mage started exploring new ways to work with the magic circle. The heroine was genuinely surprised at how quickly he was learning. Cory, for his part, thought she was practically the only person ever to even consider reworking the magic circle. Shu didn't think it was that big of a deal. Anyone could do it if they knew the principle. The mage wanted to know why someone with her talent went into fencing in the first place. If she'd chosen magic, they would have had a much better time in magic class together. The heroine decided to remind him that night mages made more money than imperial wizards. Seriously though, Cory didn't get why she was so hung up on money. Shu was floored by that question. I mean, it's a golden ticket to a good life. But the mage knew the West family was already doing pretty well. So how could her future be uncertain? The heroine was thrown for a loop, because no one had ever asked her that before. She couldn't exactly admit she knew what was coming. She played it off like she was still young and clueless about life, so she couldn't just assume everything would always be sunshine and rainbows. Shu knew she was different from Cory, because she'd already been through the ringer in her past life. Truth is, she was born into a wealthy family, and things went south when her parents died in an accident. The heroine decided to inherit their estate, but accidentally got saddled with her dad's debts in the process. She lived a hard life, taking care of her younger siblings in a tiny basement room. Back then, she was scraping by, so now she's decided to give up on these pipe dreams. Bad luck can strike any time, and Shu never wants to live like that again. Ever since she started having these dreams, she's been losing it. That's why she's crying now. Cory looked confused and wanted to know if everything was all right. The heroine hated seeing him like that. It just made things worse. The mage flicked his finger, and the blanket wrapped Shu up like a burrito. He figured she needed some sleep today and tucked her onto the couch. Cory wanted her to get up only after she was feeling better. The heroine totally wasn't expecting that and was genuinely grateful to him. After a while, Shu finished the main work on the magic device, and now she just had to adjust the power. This club stuff takes way more teamwork than I thought. As a thank you for looking out for her, the heroine gave the mage a little something, hoping he'd dig it. Meanwhile, Haley was cooking up a scheme to get back at Shu for that beatdown he got. Cory was about to dive into club activities, and the Crown Prince figured he'd go first. He was also surprised by the amount of sweets the mage brought, but they weren't just for him. Along with the snacks, Cory grabbed a magazine he'd recently ordered. It had a pretty interesting article about a guy the mage had been following for a while. Even Haley knew about Master Shunabarin, who was a shady character and the most famous guy in the underworld. Cory thought he was a genius, who somehow figured out how to make a magical cell phone. Later, walking into the lab, he greeted Shu. The mage was blown away by how quickly she finished her model. Plus, this area felt really familiar to Cory. Suddenly, it hit him. This was the tall mountain right next to the academy. He also remembered she'd be taking her fencing exam right on this mountain. They'll have a practical test fighting monsters. And the heroine was like, "How'd you know that?" Turns out the magic faculty's gonna be there too. Shu was happy about that, and that the mage was starting to smile more naturally. Cory realized this model had something to do with the exam. He hoped the heroine wouldn't push herself too hard, because the monsters are seriously tough these days. Day by day, the mage seemed like a better and better dude, who doesn't ask too many questions at once. Shu didn't want him hogging the couch all the time, but Cory outsmarted her, and now he's levitating with magic. Suddenly, she remembered his gift and rushed to give it to him. Opening the pouch, the mage saw a magic earring. It was an artifact that helped control magic. Taking a closer look with his trained eye, Cory realized something like this was hard to come by. Suddenly, he saw the engraving, and the shock made him faceplant. Pale with shock, he couldn't figure out where she got it. Surprised by his reaction, she decided to mention she made it herself. The mage couldn't believe she was the one who made that engraving. because that means she's the legendary master, Shunibaran. Hearing that name, Shu almost fell over in shock and stared at Cory, totally confused. Then, he showed her an article, Siars about her, and started gushing over her groundbreaking inventions. All this time, she'd been wearing a disguise cloak, changing her appearance, and trying not to leave any trace. She never imagined there were people this obsessed with her, or even articles like that. From now on, she couldn't just be handing out autographs with her real identity, and she needed to get Cory to keep his mouth shut. With that thought, she walked up to him, and all of a sudden, the mage wanted Shunibarin to hold out her hand. She did it silently, and Cory started shaking her hand like crazy. Unable to contain his excitement, the mage screamed and bolted out of the lab, leaving a dust trail. Shu had never seen him like that before, and realized he was a serious fanboy. He came back a little later and apologized for acting so wild. Plus, he got his ear pierced and was totally digging how the earring looked. The next day, the girl was surprised to see Hestia hitting the books even during break time. Her friend slammed her notebook shut, pretending she was just doodling. On top of that, she was wondering if Shu had prepped for the test. This girl was 100% ready to snag that scholarship again. Suddenly, Rose strolled up, wanting to know what Shu's secret sauce was. They barely even talked, and the girl was floored by her audacity. The student was talking about Cory, who Shu had somehow managed to get close to. The girl wanted to make sure she understood. She should approach him herself, 'cause he just looks intimidating. Rose remembered trying that already, but he totally blew her off. According to the student, he looked like he was about to offer. Shu was sure it was just a simple misunderstanding, but she probably wouldn't buy it. So, she decided to drop it and dragged Hestia off to grab a bite. Rose figured she only got ahead because she was hot, and that's when the main character spun around, ready to go off. Pretending she was about to spill the beans, Shu blew in her ear. After that, she and her friend bolted, leaving the student totally confused. At some point, Hestia decided to double-check if Cory was really that popular. Even though he looks intimidating, he's actually pretty good-looking. Plus, he comes from a good family, and his magic skills are so amazing, he's the best in our year. This mage has always been popular, but since the start of the semester, people have been talking about him like he's the crown prince. The day of the high mountain exam finally arrived. Mages and knights gathered on a single platform. Shu glared daggers at Cory, seeing him as a total backstabber. He didn't have as many friends as she did, but she never expected him to be this popular. It was all because of his dazzling looks, which, come on, you'd expect from one of the main characters. She had to admit, she was seriously jealous of his male popularity, especially since she had short hair as a kid, and everyone mistook her for a boy and teased her. The mage felt super awkward under her gaze, and he had no idea what was going on. The heroine pretended she just wanted to be as good-looking as him. Cory's face and ears instantly turned red, and his knees went weak. He wanted to punch himself for being such a loser that Shu even remembered he was a fan. And his awkwardness wasn't enough for her. She wanted to make the mage even more endearing. She was thinking of giving him an autograph, or a free hug, maybe even holding his hand. Haley walked up to them, surprised that Shu was so calm during her first practical exam. The heroine pretended to be holding it together, so she could definitely beat the crown prince. After that, the students were gathered and told that the monster subjugation would happen in 3 stages. The student who blocks the most attacks in 30 minutes will take first place. Also, the battle robes are enchanted, so if anyone gets hurt, they'll be sent straight to the infirmary. Haley noticed there weren't that many mages, and it turned out this test wasn't mandatory for them at all. He realized that was probably why he didn't see Swanhaden here. Cory was totally shocked, 'cause this dude didn't even get into the academy. Swan took off to study overseas, down south, even though there's a war raging there right now. That guy's name stirred up some memories for Shu. She figured she could never forget him, 'cause he was like an angel. The crown prince and the mage knew him too, since they were kids. Cory knew Swan was already going into his 3rd year. Haley remembered his shenanigans, and really didn't want to run into him. Suddenly, they were all wondering, does the heroine know this guy? The crown prince had heard that the Blanche family and the West family were in contact. Shu was quick to point out that the only reason they talked was business. Yeah, she saw Swan around a lot, but that doesn't mean they were exactly best buds. Whenever he and his dad came over, he'd head straight for the training grounds. That's where she'd run into him during her own training sessions. He was kinda cute, but with this really cold look on his face. Shu didn't know anything about him, just remembered his deadpan stare. He always blew her off, so they were never gonna be friends. Meanwhile, Swan was pretending to listen to Hestia's rambling. He was one of the main guys, but he couldn't get the girl in the original story, so he shut down his feelings. Honestly, most of the male characters were total losers. But Haley and Cory were way different from their novel versions, way more like real people. Meanwhile, the test kicked off, and all the students scattered like roaches. Shu had no clue where they were rushing off to, but honestly, she was kinda stoked about it. 'Cause that scholarship money and club funding, it's all hers now. She figured out that the mage could torch all the slimes at once, if she could just herd them into one spot. Plus, she remembered the Crown Prince used to hunt monsters back in the day, so she wanted to task him with finding the big slime, but it was crucial to bring it back alive. After Haley took off, Cory wanted to track the monsters, but Shu decided to lure them here instead. That's when she fired up the illusion magic circle. A few seconds later, the first slimes showed up, totally hypnotized, crawling towards the circle. Pretty soon, there were dozens of them, maybe even more. The heroine used a magic circle to lure them in, one that emitted these monsters' favorite scent. The mage couldn't believe his ears. He thought she was totally awesome. Once all the slimes swarmed in, the heroes decided to hustle before they got wise. Cory unleashed a massive blast of fire on them. Shu was blown away by the mage's power. That blue flame was crazy hot. Even standing back, the heroine felt the heat, so Cory threw up a water shield around her. Shu was genuinely grateful for him looking out for her. In the end, they gathered up enough defeated monsters to fill 3 whole bags. That was more than enough for each of the friends to get top marks on the exam. Still, they had 20 minutes left, and the mage was drawing a blank on what to do next. Figuring he'd find out everything soon enough, the heroine handed him the magic orb. She tossed another one of those balls at a slime, showing him how to catch them. The orb also had Shunibaren engraved on it, and Cory hoped she'd let him keep it. Shu thought he was getting cuter every day and happily agreed. She was planning to catch a bunch of monsters and release them on the mountain model in the lab for research. The mage thought she was a blast to be around, and he didn't even know what he'd do without her. Shu was shocked and confused because everyone always thought she was an airhead. Suddenly, they heard the Crown Prince's voice. Looks like he'd already caught the slime boss. Just as expected, Haley was already standing triumphantly with one foot on the defeated enemy. Suddenly, he went pale and ordered Shu to stay put. Turns out, the whole thing was about that magic ball she was holding. The mage was totally lost, but the heroine calmed him down and decided she'd figure it out herself. The Crown Prince couldn't believe she was seriously going to use him again. She hurled the ball in his direction, but the main slime was the real target. Knowing he's the heir to the throne, she definitely wasn't about to trap him in a ball and cause trouble for the royal family. Haley apologized for the misunderstanding, but he couldn't figure out why she was laughing. Then it hit him. She'd recorded the whole thing. That's when the Crown Prince remembered he'd recorded her music lesson, and then things got heated between them. Cory thought they couldn't stand each other, but apparently, Haley and Shu were getting along great. Later, the heroine got a special shout-out at the academy for acing her final exams. Seeing Shu's smile, Hestia figured something good must have happened. She pretended it was because of the break, since she'd be going home soon. Her friend was looking forward to it too, since they couldn't hang out much during school. But they could see each other every day during vacation. She was also hoping Shu would help her pack. More than anything, she wanted to wean Hestia off relying on her so much. Maybe it was her fault for always looking after her. So, Shu decided that from now on, her friend would have to pack her own stuff. They weren't kids anymore, and Hestia needed to learn to stand on her own 2 feet. To get where she wanted to be, she had to be able to plan her moves herself. Her friend didn't say anything, but her hand twitched nervously. The heroine figured everyone got the message, and it was time to split. Hestia, though, didn't get what the big deal was about being independent. Her parents always told her she didn't need it. Shu would take care of everything. Later, the heroine and the mage started watching the monsters on the model, who were getting busy with mating season. Shu knew she might have been a little harsh with her friend, but it had to be done. They're gonna have to go their separate ways eventually, 'cause everyone's got their own path. Cory noticed she was off and asked if everything was all right. The heroine quickly pretended she was just wrapping things up. The mage apologized for making her write the report, but Shu didn't think it was a big deal. So Cory decided to feed the heroine some sweets while her hands were full. The candy slipped out of his hand, but Shu snagged it mid-air with her mouth like a boss. The mage was blown away by her crazy skills. He started chucking candies everywhere just to watch her catch 'em all. Finally, Shu, totally drained, decided to stop wasting time. She finished the project report, and thanks to her friends, she managed to collect all the monster samples they needed. The mage remembered that the teacher in charge of the club didn't even care about the project, even though it turned out to be super valuable. He thought it'd be awesome to see the club rankings next semester. Shu was seriously confused, 'cause she barely managed to drag Cory into her club in the first place. And now he's talking like he actually wants to stick around next semester? After class, everyone bolted to the cafeteria, 'cause they were serving up a ton of meat today. The mage was the only one asleep, so the crown prince went over to wake him up. He thought it was a total disaster that Cory couldn't even be bothered to eat. Suddenly, the mage woke up and wondered if there were club activities today. He apologized and said he wanted to make the most of club time and enjoy it. So he gave the crown prince some candy and decided he'd have to eat alone. Haley was furious that he'd been waiting for this dude. Cory didn't get why the crown prince was suddenly worried about him, since they never cared about each other before. What's more, Haley couldn't stand talking to him, and the mage never thought they'd be friends. Suddenly, he remembered the time the crown prince was super surprised that he knew Sharena too. After that, the heroine showed his highness some, let's just say, intense training plans. The guys were arguing like crazy, each trying to get the mage on their side. So, he figured their relationship was actually getting better because of Shu. Walking into the lab, he saw the heroine sleeping peacefully on the couch. Cory took a good look at her, remembering how everyone's obsessed with Hestia, saying she's like the hottest thing ever. The mage was thinking, so why is it that I'm paying more attention to Shu then? He just really liked watching her sleep. Later, the heroine woke up and saw, well, let's just say she looked like she'd seen a ghost in the mirror. Cory explained that her hair was all over her face, so he decided to braid it. It looked kinda ridiculous, but the mage was trying not to crack up. After apologizing, he went to undo it all. So, out of nowhere, Shu wants to know why she's such a fright. She figured it was the puffy face, but Cory jumped in to tell her that wasn't it and untangled her hair. But even back to normal, she still thought she looked like a train wreck. The mage just grinned and told her she was gorgeous. Shu was taken aback and started to think maybe he was being straight with her. Plus, she knew he was a good guy, probably just trying not to hurt her feelings. Right then, Cory remembered he wanted to give her those orange slice earrings. She was super surprised and didn't get what they were for. It was a thank you gift for her earring. And also, he was down to stay in the magic club next semester. Truth is, he was always gonna stay, but he was nervous and felt like he needed to sweeten the deal somehow. So, he respectfully wished the head of the magic club good luck next year. Shu was stunned by his dazzling smile, which was almost enough to completely win her over. Besides, she didn't get when he'd started acting so effortlessly charming anyway. The heroine wanted to thank him, but suddenly her stomach let out a loud growl. Cory realized she hadn't eaten lunch yet and figured there'd probably still be something left in the cafeteria. Shu thought one meal a day was enough for her, but the mage used telekinesis and carried her to the cafeteria. Suddenly, she got a call and sent Cory ahead, deciding to answer it herself. Left alone, she pulled out a magical device and, to her surprise, heard Kale's voice. Some big shot wanted to meet with Shunibarin, and the assistant didn't know what to tell him. The next day, Shu said goodbye to her friends before heading home for vacation. They're supposed to meet up for that food tour in a few days. The crown prince's carriage showed up first, so Haley had to bounce. Cory figured the heroine could head out too, since he still had some stuff to take care of. It was just a small get-together, and the mage told Shu she could call him any time during her vacation. She felt a little bummed that everyone was splitting up. Though, thinking back to the original story, the heroine should probably stay away from those two anyway. After that, she hopped in the carriage with her older brother and Hestia. The carriage was bumpy as hell, and Haroon's stuff looked like it was gonna fall right on Shu's head. Even her brother was surprised he had so much baggage. Plus, Haroon was bummed that his little sis never visits, and the heroine thought he could just come see her himself. Thing is, her brother kept showing up, but she was totally dodging him. That's when her friend remembered Shu saying how much her brother got on her nerves. He figured his little sis was still the sweetest thing ever, plus totally gorgeous and beautiful. The heroine had no clue what he was rambling about and told him to stay put. Haroon sadly thought about how she'd be all grown up and leaving home soon, and they wouldn't be able to hug anymore. Even though Shu didn't have a boyfriend, her brother was the last guy she'd ever hug. Haroon decided that if she ever did get a boyfriend, it would crush him. The heroine knew for a fact she'd never have a partner, so he had nothing to worry about. Back in her past life, nobody ever gave her a second glance romantically. It's the same deal now, since Hestia's the one who's supposed to be the star of the show. So, my girl here chimes in, making it clear Shu's not looking to play the field with any guys. Her brother was totally digging that, 'cause it meant he'd always be with his little sis. Meanwhile, Cory noticed the academy was eerily quiet after all the students cleared out. He was bummed he couldn't stick around for the break. He walked into the classroom, and Evans Lunash greeted him. This guy was a third year and the son of the High Lord Lunash. He was wondering why the mage looked so down in the dumps. Cory brought the magic stones and wanted to wrap things up ASAP. The merchant was blown away by the quality of the stones Cory had crafted himself. In exchange, he handed the mage devices made by Shunibaran herself. There was something else important too, and Evans was hoping Cory would hear him out. The mage knew from experience the merchant was going to try to sell him something again. Evans was genuinely scary, and he didn't become a government official at such a young age for nothing. So Cory decided to bail and just leave. After the door shut, the merchant thought the mage had changed a lot since they last met. He knew Cory had a thing for Shunibaran and wanted to let him know he was planning to meet up with her. A while later, the servants greeted Lord and Lady West at the entrance. Little Kareem immediately ran out to them, happily greeting his brother and sister. He threw himself into Shu's arms because he'd missed her so much. Haruna figured his little brother just hadn't seen him and was ready for a hug too. But Kareem wasn't even gonna do it. Haroon got pissed and decided to bail and told his brother not to follow him. But then, out of nowhere, the old maid Lita gave him a big hug and asked him to try some apple pie. The hero teared up with joy, but the maid realized she'd made a mistake. She immediately rushed off to greet the young lady, leaving Haroon totally confused. He figured they had no shame, and then they all took off to chow down on pie. At the table, the heroes started filling their parents in on what's been happening at the academy. Baron West was genuinely glad they weren't having any trouble. His wife hoped the heroine was happy with the school food. Haroon remembered his mom never asked him questions like that when he enrolled. Unlike her past life, Shu felt super comfortable around her family, though some things were kinda weird, like the fancy food that they definitely couldn't afford. Her mom's hair was thick and shiny, her skin was tight and clear, and she was rocking new jewelry and a killer dress. She was clearly dropping some serious cash on herself. Suddenly, the Baroness wondered if her daughter wanted to hit the mall with her for some shopping. Shu sighed and figured she'd just let things be for now. Today was the first time the whole family had been together in ages, and she didn't want to ruin the vibe. Just then, Lida brought her an apple pie. Taking a bite, she outwardly acted like it was the best thing she'd ever tasted. But inside she was like, is this maid trying to, take me out or something? Lida mixed up the sugar and salt, but even so, Shu ate the whole damn pie. She knew the maid's eyesight had been going bad lately. The heroine's personal maid, Emily, was blown away by her mistress's kindness. Lida had worked for the West family the longest, and at her age, finding a new job would be a real nightmare. Emily smiled, thinking her mistress was so mature, even if she was kinda short. That's why she prepped a special massage for her, to help her grow. The heroine decided to ask her what had been going on at the house while she was away. What she really wanted to know was, how much cash did her mom blow? Shu was worried she might have dipped into the emergency fund. Judging by the maid's face, the Baroness had told her to keep her mouth shut. But Kareem was definitely gonna spill the beans, so she went straight to him. The kid was hoping she'd come to read him a bedtime story. Instead, Shu reminded him about the favor she asked before heading off to the academy. Kareem remembered he had to swap out the shirt that Lida accidentally scorched while ironing. He pulled it off without a hitch, and Mom and Dad never found out. That was all well and good, but she'd also entrusted him with keeping tabs on Mom's spending. Suddenly, her brother went white as a sheet and tearfully apologized. He was hoping she wouldn't be too mad about him dropping the ball. Later, Shu managed to get her hands on receipts for Mom's purchases and income reports from the Baron's secretary. After looking through everything, she was horrified. Mom blew our emergency fund on a shopping spree, so our income's still the same, but the debt's just ballooned. If this keeps up, we'll be struggling to even pay the interest, forget about the principal, which means I'm gonna have to hustle and take every gig that comes my way for Shuni Babe. First things first, our girl decided to check her email. Suddenly, she remembered Kale mentioning someone wanted to meet with her. Turns out, it was someone from the Loonish family. This meant the meeting could be a total game changer, and Shu didn't want to miss out. The next day, she went looking for her dear mother. The Baroness was in her room, and hearing her daughter's voice, immediately ducked behind the curtain. She decided to act like she was super busy today and didn't have time to talk. Mom peeked out from behind cover, and our girl rushed to point out she'd already checked her schedule and she's totally free today. So, Shu was hoping the Baroness could spare her just a minute of her time. Later, Mom showed her this gorgeous dress she'd bought for her daughter. Our girl thought the dress was cute, but something else was bugging her. She slapped a stack of receipts on the table and wanted to hear something from the woman. The Baroness had blown through all their emergency savings. Before Shu left, her mom swore there was nothing to worry about, but clearly that was BS. The Baroness burst into tears, saying she was lonely when she and Harun left, and she was just trying to feel better. That was a low blow, but she couldn't back down now. The heroine decided to switch up her strategy, and luckily, her mom in this life was just as caring as she was in the last. Shu gave her the puppy dog eyes and acted